If you feel you need some guidance with your watercolour painting and want to know how to paint this dreamy romantic rose, even if you think you can't paint, then stick around, it's easier than you think. So as always, I've done a really simple trace down outline of the rose, and I'll give you details on how you can do this in a moment, but a simple line drawing is all you need here. And a quick material run through. I'm using Munio watercolour paints, but whatever you have is suitable, and just 4 colours for this tutorial: permanent rose, yellow orange, sap green and indigo, but like I say, use the nearest that you have, and all the materials I will put in the description box below. I begin by mixing permanent rose with a lot of water to a weak consistency. We want this paint to be the lightest colour pink that we can see within the photograph. I'll talk to you a little bit about the photograph and the line drawing in a moment, and if you don't know how to trace down your drawings, I'll put an information card on the top of the screen right now so that you can look at it. You can see here that the reference photograph has been selected as a competition winner by a lady called Dyah Retno Wulandari. I hope I'm saying that right, and congratulations. So we have chosen this to do this month's tutorial, and I really hope we do it justice for you. So I started by applying a simple water glaze that's applying water all over the pencil line and just dropping in this really watery mix of permanent rose, as you can see, avoiding the petal on the right hand side because we don't want to put the paint on the bottom side of the petal. We want to keep that plain, and all I'm doing is applying the water to the pencil line, making sure that I stay within it because that is where we will drop the paint. I'm applying the paint to the outside edge of the rose and avoiding the inside of this particular petal because it's much paler in colour. I'm adding a little bit more permanent rose and just dropping it in, and you can see how it naturally blurs into the damp paper like this. Stress-free watercolour painting. I think watercolour painting has a sort of bad reputation of being a difficult thing to do, but it really isn't. It's all about practice. So this is a relatively easy rose painting tutorial, and it is suitable for beginners, so join in even if you think it might be a bit daunting. Once the paint is dry, I've mixed 2 greens here. I'm going to do 3 actually. Sap green on its own, sap green with a little bit of permanent rose to give a brown colour, and sap green with a bit of indigo just to give it a bit of darkness. And I'm applying this wet on dry because we need more control because the areas are slightly smaller. And this colour can go all over the green area of the rose, so that's the stem, the leaves and that little bud. So this is green with a bit of indigo, and as I keep saying, use the colours that you have that are nearest. A lot of brands have the same name but the colours are very different, so just use the colours that you have within your palette. The colours I'm using today are from Munio, and the sap green is very bright, and I think if you were to use sap green within your own kit, it would be probably the nearest colour to the photograph, so it would make it a bit easier. I'm just blending in that paint with a damp brush once I've applied it to give it a soft blurred edge. So just clean your brush in water, pat it on some kitchen towel so that it is just damp, and then merge the colours together. So the paint is now dry and I cleaned down my palette, mixing two mixes, maybe 3 mixes of permanent rose. So we have permanent rose on its own, permanent rose with a bit of yellow orange to give a sort of really bright orangey colour, and I'm going to add some water to that because it needs to be very, very pale, and I'll explain why in a moment. So I'm using this number 0 size brush here. The brushes I'm using are spotters, but use whatever you have as long as it's got a small pointy end like this. And I'm going through petal by petal, applying the paint and blending it in with a damp brush as before. You'll need a little bit of patience for this one, but I promise you it will be worth it. So looking at the reference photograph, apply the pink tone where you see the very pink colour, and then drop in the darker permanent rose like this. The yellow-orange mix that we have will be applied here, but make sure that it is light enough. We don't want it to look too orangey. It's just a very, very light sort of hue of that particular colour, and blend it in like this. And I'll continue the process for every one of these little petals, making sure that I leave a small gap at the top of each one where the light hits it. And just keep blending it by wiggling that brush. I've used mixed media paper, and it does make this process a little bit easier, I think, than maybe expensive watercolor paper that can be really absorbent. But this method of painting really suits this kind of paper. But just use whatever paper that you have and that you're comfortable with. I'm just dipping between the light mix and the darker mix of permanent rose, working once again wet on wet, applying the water to the pencil line and then just dropping in these colours, using a kind of wiggly motion to blend the paint into the paper like this. And just applying water to the next petal, and once again dropping in the pink colour, as you can see. So by applying the water to the pencil line and then just dropping in that colour wet and wet, it gives this beautiful soft blur as before. So we're doing wet on wet and wet on dry for this tutorial, so that you can practice both techniques and see which one you prefer. And just continuing the process for all the petals. Remember to stay away, if you can, from the top part of the petal, keeping it as pale as you can so that it looks like the light is hitting it and it looks really natural. It's raining really heavily in the UK today, so I really hope that you can't hear the rain on my microphone. So just keep going petal by petal. Like I said, you'll need a little bit of patience for this one, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. And this is pretty much a real-time tutorial. I've speeded up a little bit of the application process because it would have taken a long time, but pretty much real time we're here, just speeding up a few frames for you as we go through. Just blending in that paint and dropping in the darker rose colour, as you can see. So the paints that I'm using are from Munio, and they're kind of inexpensive paints. I'm not using the finest artist quality paints, although I have to say I've recently purchased them from Amazon and I absolutely love them. I will link them in the description, and they are just beautiful colours to use. You get a lot of colour for your money. I'm using the paler colours as we hit the centre of the rose. So it's the paler permanent rose, and then just keep looking at your reference photograph to see where you need to apply that colour. Now that this is completely dry, we can focus our attention back onto the green areas of the rose. So I'm going to do 3 petals of sap green here. We'll use sap on its own, and we'll add indigo to one of the petals to make it a really dark, rich green colour. And then a bit of permanent rose to the other, and I'm going to just add another petal here so that I can dip in and out and maybe just add a bit more contrast to the other ones. So just add as much of the other colour as you feel necessary to match your photograph. And then working again wet on dry, making sure that the paint is dry before you do this, and just blend the colours in as I'm doing here. So you'll be able to see that the really dark green with the indigo, you can see that I'll be applying that on the leaves in a moment, but the more kind of the browny tone will be applied to the sort of thorn on the side of the stalk here, and this little part here has just got the sort of mid-tone dark, and then blending it in with a brush like this. This is a number 2 size synthetic flat brush that I'm just using to lift out a little bit of the paint. And now we're using the indigo with sap green on this part here, and just working carefully around the area where the petal hits the greenery, and then blending it through. So this will be our mid-tone. Remember, watercolour painting is all about adding your layers. So it's really important that you let the colours dry and make sure that you have all your tonal variations. So I recommend that you really do watch this video all the way through so that you can see how the process unfolds. If you're new to watercolour painting, I think sometimes the mistake that people can make is that it looks really disjointed and wrong, but if you carry on, you'll see that it's meant to look this way and it will all come together in the end. So I'm adding the brownie mix here and just pulling it down the stem of the rose and blending it in as always. And using this colour also as kind of a glaze by adding it on top. And once again, using the flat synthetic brush to lift out where I slightly went outside the pencil line. Using the tip of my brush to create some sort of spikes, I don't know what you call them, spikes on the outside of this leaf here. I've added a bit of artistic license. I felt that the photograph, it was a little bit too smooth on the outside, so I'm just adding these for a little bit of drama and using the sap green and indigo mix, not the darkest mix but the mid-tone mix, and just applying it as you can see. And just dropping in some of the darker colour, working around that central vein there, doing a little bit of negative painting. And this is the sap green on its own. You can see how the colours just kind of merge together, and then just blend them in with your brush. Just take this over. You can still see the underlying washes underneath. And now I'm dropping in the darker green mix, as the indigo and sap. I've mixed a watery puddle of indigo here, applying it over the initial sap green wash, and you can see how this has given it a really beautiful greeny blue hue, which I felt it really did need. And just dropping in that indigo colour. You can see how subtle that looks, but so pretty. And again, just dropping in the darker indigo colour on the edge here to just give it a little bit more drama. So we're dropping this colour in wet in wet, or wet on wet. Again, a little bit of artistic license. And this is the permanent rose and sap, and blending it through. So I find watercolour painting so relaxing. I think quite a few people have said they found it therapeutic. So don't be frightened to try it if you think you can't do it. Summon the courage and just give it a try. It really is a lovely thing to be able to do. I'm self-taught, and yeah, anyone can do it. Here I'm adding some permanent rose over the petal that you can see here. I'm just going over the paint that we've already applied, enhancing it here and there to create a little bit of a pattern and texture within this bottom right hand petal. I'm mixing a little bit of indigo and a little bit of green here to add some colour to the base. I felt it looked a little bit too light, and this gives a little bit of tonal contrast and variation and the hint of a shadow. And just glazing over here and there, enhancing the already dry paint. And repeating the process on the other side. So I've mixed indigo with permanent rose to a watery consistency, and I'm applying this to the base of some of the petals because it was too pink, and I felt it needed a little bit more of a sort of darker value, which is why I've chosen to use this colour. So just apply this where you feel necessary. Once again, looking at your reference photograph to see where you feel you need that little bit of extra drama. And just continuing to blend these colours in, enhancing the colours that we've placed already. So now it's just a case of repeating the process. The hard work is done now. Our template is in place and we can begin to add the layers and enhance what we've put on the paper. So there you saw my subscribe prompt. So if you are enjoying this video, then do give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. We have new content every Tuesday. And also we have an online site with Patreon. So if you'd like to join us over there, then do take a look. The link will be in the description. The line drawing and the reference photograph for this will be in the Facebook group, and I'll put a link in the description box below. So do consider joining us over there, where you can have these free line drawings and the photograph, and also you can post up your completed paintings and show off your wonderful work. And if you want to have some feedback, you can have that too. So do consider joining us over there on our private Facebook group. As I said, if you are enjoying this video, do give it a like or a thumbs up. It does really help to support me and keep me on this wonderful YouTube platform so that I can provide free videos for you. So now we're really building up these colours over the existing washes, and once again the application process will be the same now, but we're working at this point wet on dry and just dipping in between the colours on my palette, and once again going over with a simple plain water glaze with my number 6 size brush with a light touch just to merge these colours together, and then we have to once again let the paint dry. The paint has now dried and I've cleaned down my palette, so we can really start to enhance these colours. So a few drops of water. I'm using this little cheap pipette thing that I bought. It just saves splashing water onto my palette. So we have sap green. And once again, we're adding indigo to one of the petals to make it a really dark, vibrant green. And I'm going to keep one, I'm going to do a permanent rose petal on its own so that we can glaze over some of the colours with that, and then just mix them together like this. The consistency of the paint at this point is slightly less watery. We want to have a good amount of pigment in there, so it's slightly drier so that we can work on smaller areas at a time. I'm now enhancing these little spiky parts on the leaf and blending it in as usual. I'm dropping in some of the permanent rose here because I just, again, a little bit of artistic license, and just do what you feel you want to do and add a little bit of colour here and there. So the traceable line drawing for this will be put in the Facebook group, and when you trace down your drawings, just use a really light touch. You don't want any heavy lines because I don't erase my pencil lines after painting, so just do a really light touch when you're tracing it down. So now I'm just going over what I've done already with the permanent rose wash, so just glazing over. And the reason we glaze over is because you can still see the colours underneath and it just gives it another dimension. So just building these colours up now, as you can see, just switching between the greens that I have within my palette, adding the darker colour where you can see me applying it like this and blending it in as always. So again, I'm just switching between the colours within my palette and just using my number 0 size spotter, which has gone a little bit blunt. I need to buy some new brushes, but just dropping those in and blending it through and sharpening up some of the edges here. I like to really sharpen up my watercolour paintings. If you want to do that, you can do that too. Just carrying on and just enhancing the colours and bringing in that little bit of drama like this. And once again, going back and adding some more colours and layers like this. And glazing over to blend. We've still got a few things to do on this, and a lot of it now is repeating the process. So you can see how I'm just using the pink tone and the pink tone with the indigo, and I've gone outside the pencil line, so I'm using my flat brush to just wipe it away and pat it with some kitchen towel, which removes the error. We all make mistakes, right? And just repeating the process now. We have to just make this nice and sharp and add a little bit of drama where needed. I'm going to stop talking for a while so that you can enjoy watching me do this and enjoy some relaxing music as we go through. Doing this until your painting is completed.